The moon rode low over the darkened fields south of King's Landing, a tarnished silver coin half hidden in gauzy cloud, and beneath its failing light Brienne of Tarth waited among the ruins of the Rosary village. What had once been lime-washed cottages lay broken like an old man's teeth, their walls clawed out by fire and dwarfing shadows. 3 nights ago, Clegane's outriders had torched the place on their sweep east toward the Blackwater, but the smoke still clung to the air, a faint sting in her throat. She could smell damp ash, trampled rye, and somewhere under it, the unburied sweetness of decay. Villagers too poor or too frightened to flee when the sellswords came. She knelt beside the blown carcass of a cart mule, fingers brushing the stiffened hide the way a septa might smooth a child's hair. The beast's eyes were gone, plucked clean by crows, but a length of frayed harness still circled its neck. Brienne loosened it, testing the leather for strength. Serviceable enough. She cut a strip with her dagger, wrapped it round her palm to muffle the steel of Oathkeeper, then rose, letting the dead mule settle back into the mud. Every motion felt slow and formal, a ritual of severance, each gesture snipping yet another thread between the woman she had been and the one she must become before dawn. A knight of the 7 kingdoms had sworn to keep an oath, yet here she crouched beneath broken lintels, preparing for murder. Murder. The word fluttered like a trapped bat behind her teeth. Jaime had named her friend and sworn brother in arms. Cersei she had vowed, long ago before the Sept, to serve in trust of Lady Stark's daughters. Treachery on treachery. But vows were living things, and this last year, the realm had twisted them until they strangled each other. She saw Sansa's pale face as the girl rode north out of Winterfell's ashes, Arya's stone-sharp silences in the yard at Riverrun, Jon Snow's haunted eyes as he shouldered the crown that broke him. She saw the long road of graves behind her, Renly, whose rainbow guard she had failed, Podrick, sweet Podrick, whom she had left with Tormund in the Vale for safety, and who might even now be bleeding under some Ironfoot's boot. How many oaths could a soul bear before it splintered? Bootfalls crunched soft behind her. Brienne turned. David, the Tiroshi scout, eased in around a fire-scarred doorframe, a crossbow slung idle across his back. He wore no sigil, but gold stubble gleamed across his cheeks, bright in the wan starlight. Gold as Lannister hair, though his own bore none of their arrogance. He swept a hand toward the smoldering skyline where the Red Keep's towers stabbed upward like daggers forged of blood and darkness. Patrol passed half a turn ago. His common was thick, altering his vowels. Only 5 men. The Goldcloaks look more for rats than rebels. Rats. Dot. Rebels. Brienne's lips shaped no answer. In the combe below them, the Blackwater River snaked toward the bay, its surface a mirror of black glass. Warships lay hulking off the quays, lanterns doused so their hulks appeared as darker smears upon the dark. But the city beyond clung to a feverish glow. Cookfires, torches, burning thatch where some riot had spread. Ever since Daenerys dragons had burned those streets, King's Landing slept with eyes wide, never certain whether dawn would come in flame. "When do we move?" David asked. Brienne unhooked the loop that bound Oathkeeper's scabbard to her back. The scabbard's black leather bore nicks and scrapes from years of marches. The sapphire pommel caught the ghost light, glittering like frost on winter grass. She thought of Jaime's hand curling around that pommel when first he'd given her the blade, outside the gates of Harrenhal. The warmth of his flesh against hers, the earnestness in his eyes unsullied by ridicule. Gods, how he had changed. How she had let that change her. Love was the easiest snare of all. Now. She said, the single word dull in her own ears, as if spoken not by a living woman, but by the wicker shadow she cast. She tugged her cloak close, hiding her mailed shoulders. "Tell the others." David hesitated. "The Cell's words. They say the lioness grows desperate. Half her stores gone, and the fleet of Lys still weeks away. If we wait, tomorrow 1,000 innocents may lie dead atop her desperation." Brienne replied, "We cannot measure children's lives against one night's convenience." The Tyroshi bowed his head and vanished to rouse their tiny band. 9 in all, outcasts drawn from the spit of war. A Dornish mantlet breaker, Two summer islanders with skin as dark as hammered onyx, a fatherless girl from the sisters, an aging northern archer who had once served Roose Bolton and worn the flayed man until Shane chafed the emblem from his surcoat. And David himself, who claimed no flag but hunger. They followed Brienne not for coin but conviction, or that was what she prayed, though she could not claim to know the forge of any man's heart. Still, even a blade born of Basor can cut true. When they were ready, she led them down the broken pavers toward the postern road. Thistledown floated in the night air, white motes swirling before their lamplight, as if the world itself were breathing dust-bright ghosts. With each step, the red keep drew higher, its silhouette monumental, a scab upon the sky. Somewhere inside those walls, Jaime Lannister walked on two sound legs, iron hand gleaming like a fallen star. Somewhere, Cersei poured venom into goblets and plotted demise for every soul west of Pentos. The thought beat through Brienne's skull to the rhythm of her pulse. They yet live, I yet breathe. By dawn one of those truths must end. They crossed the dried moat where the dragon flame had boiled stagnant water into choking vapor, then pressed up the slope beneath the cover of unkempt hedges. The mantlet breaker, Alandro, wedged a pry bar between two stones, and with a grunt the ancient mortar cracked. One by one they slipped through the breach, silent shadows against the thicker dark. Within the outer bailey, rubble choked the yards. Castle cats slunk across toppled statuary. Wind tugged shredded banners so they whispered like snake scales. Brienne's companions scattered to the wings, mapping escape routes, slitting throats of any lone guard unfortunate enough to wander near. Their bodies they dragged behind casks or toppled braziers, hiding blood in the deeper dusk. Brienne forbade torchlight. Their eyes must learn their work by feel. She herself moved like a mountain underwater, each step sure yet heavy, as if the stone beneath sensed treason in her bootprints and tried to cling to her soles. At the foot of Maegor's holdfast, she paused. The keep within the keep had withstood dragons, wildfire, and generations of treachery. Its doors were bound in black iron, thicker than a man's arm. Yet the smaller servant Sally lay ajar, hinges warped by the same blast that had charred the surrounding courtyard. She pressed a mailed palm to the ironwood, feeling its chill seep into her bones. Inside, corridors spiraled upward, narrow as spear shafts. A handful of wall torches sputtered, casting pools of amber that seemed almost obscene in their warmth. Brienne kept to the shadows, advancing beneath rusting suits of armor that watched her with hollow visors. She tried to place each turn from the maps Podrick had pored over by candlelight. Lips pursed, faithful as any maester. Gods bless you, Pod. The memory threaded through her with a pang. She wished he were safe across the narrow sea, somewhere queens did not burn children to feed their whims. But there was no such realm. She feared, not in this life. A hush enveloped the servant's stare. She could smell the tang of tallow old dust, and beneath it the faintest perfume of lemon and nightshade that clung always to Cersei's presence. Her throat tightened. How close they were now. Half a flight above, voices drifted. Two gold cloaks, their tone bored. Something about rations, the dearth of wine. A whore named Elaine, boasting of mattress secrets. Brienne hugged the wall's curve and waited until their boots receded, then climbed. Dampness streaked the stone. When the stair spilled onto a parapet walk, cool wind slapped her cheek, sharpening resolve like whetstone to a blade. She signaled with fist to breast. Alandro and the northern archer flanked her, bows half drawn. They moved along the parapet's inside lip until the hall of the 100 hearths yawned open below, vast as any sept, its pillars gnawed by long-dead fires, its marble floor a scrawl of cracks. Through arched windows, the city glittered, and beyond that, the dark sea. In the hall's center stood Jaime Lannister. He wore no cloak nor helm, merely boiled leather and a breastplate scarred by the bite of dragon flame. His golden hair hung sweat-plastered to his brow. He pressed a hand, his right, the flesh hand, against the stone railing that overlooked the cellars where wildfire once slept. Behind him, Queen Cersei sprawled upon a camp chair draped in crimson velvet, that looked oddly obscene against the hall's ruin. She was garbed in black silk sewn thick with shining beads. They caught torchlight like so many spider eyes. No guard stood with them. Perhaps none were trusted this deep. Perhaps Jaime alone was guard enough. If so, arrogance would be their doom. Brienne studied Jaime's stance, the tilt of his shoulders. He looked older than her memory, but not broken. Iron Hand glimmered at his belt. Its fingers were slack. He half turned as though listening to some private echo that slithered through the stones. Cersei spoke, voice too low to carry, but Brienne saw her reach for his glove. Squeeze. The sight twisted in Brienne's gut, stirring a maelstrom of regret, sorrow, and something that might have been rage. Had she ridden 1,000 leagues for this, only to discover the old wound in her chest yet bled? A landless knight has no luxury of tears. The dead make no use of them either. She motioned forward. Alander knocked a broadhead shaft. The string sang. The arrow flew, dead straight and whisper quick. But Jaime lifted his sword in the same heartbeat, bronze edge ringing as it deflected the missile to clatter across the flagstones. Sparks danced. Jaime pivoted, instinct born of blood and battle. Eyes leaping to the shadows. Cersei lurched upright. Her mouth opened on what might have been a scream or curse, but before sound emerged, Alander loosed a second shaft. This one buried in the queen's thigh, pinning silk to chair. Cersei's cry tore the air. Jaime spun toward her, then toward darkness. A snarl contorted his handsome features. Who dares? His voice filled the hall, but the answer was silence. Alandro retreated behind a pillar, already stringing his third arrow. Brienne stepped into the dim torchlight. Jaime stared. Recognition flickered like lightning. Shock, disbelief, some flicker of raw joy that lasted no longer than a blink, swept away by fear. Brienne? Her name fell like a stone between them. She advanced. Sword still sheathed. Jaime's own blade raised, edge trembling. He wrought steel, as though it weighed more than usual. Had grief loosened his grip? Or perhaps the gods themselves laid lead upon Lannister arms this night? Sir Jaime. Her tone sounded even to her ears, a hollow echo of courtesy. Step aside. Cersei yanked at the lodged arrow, gouts of blood spilling. She hissed, face livid. You. Her eyes narrowed to green shards. Traitorous sow. I should have had you flayed near River Run. Brienne ignored her. Her gaze held Jaime's. The distance between them ached, 10 paces perhaps, yet 1,000 leagues stuffed into that span. She remembered the heat of a bath, the steam, the confessions traded like coins neither dared spend. She remembered the bear pit, his leap, his scream. Her name is Brienne. For a heartbeat her resolve wavered. Jaime took a step. You should not be here. Go. Before the Queen's Guard arrives. Then, I did not come to flee. Brienne drew Oathkeeper in a slow, deliberate glide. Valyrian steel kissed the torchlight, lines rippling like oil upon water. Jaime's breath hitched. Brienne. Think what you were doing. She thought of the children buried beneath the Red Keep's collapsed towers when Daenerys' wrath rained down, thought of those smoldering cottages, of Sansa's brittle poise and Arya's silent storms. She thought of the long ledger of broken oaths, and how each line pointed inevitably here, to the twin hearts of Lannister cruelty. No other blade would swing. Must I remind you of your vows? Jaime whispered, a plea hidden behind the rasp of steel. Must I remind you of mine? Her voice cracked. To protect the innocent, to shield the realm. You once spoke those words to me, Jaime. Did you forget? His eyes shuddered. She watched guilt flicker. I have forgotten nothing. But you are not executioner. There is yet mercy in this world. Tell that to the dead of King's Landing, she said, advancing. Tell it to Tommen, to Myrcella, to your own steel ghosts. The arrow still burning in Cersei's thigh wrenched another scream from the Queen. She clawed at Jaime's sleeve. Kill her. she spat. "Kill the bloody giantess before she guts us." Jaime's jaw clenched. "You'll have to cut through me, Brienne." A terrible calm settled over her. If that is the road, so be it. Her first stroke came from above, a diagonal slash meant to draw his parry. Jaime met it. Sparks flaring where blades kissed. The clash reverberated through her wrist. She pivoted, letting the momentum ride behind a backhand cut aimed low toward his thigh. He twisted, iron hand sweeping to block. The blow glanced off metal fingers. She stepped inside his guard, hilt eye-high, but he trapped her forearm, the living hand tightening like a vice. Their faces hung inches apart. She smelled sweat, leather, and something bitter beneath. "Don't," he whispered. "Not this way." Her heart broke anew. She wrenched free, boot heel stomping his instep. Pain lit his face. He stumbled back. Cersei shrieked for guards. Her voice echoed off pillars like a carrion crow's caw. But no footsteps thundered. Alondro and the others would be handling those. Jaime resumed guard. Their swords circled, tip to tip. He fought with the deft elegance of his youth, but his right arm lacked its former sureness, and grief weighted his shoulders. Even so, every parry rang like a bell tolling for them both. Strike, flow, strike, minutes stretched, each heartbeat a chasm. She saw him falter at a feint, and the old warrior within her recognized an opening. Still, she hesitated. He perceived the stutter and pressed forward, but not hard. Almost half-hearted, as though inviting her to end his misery. She countered, Oathkeeper sliding along his edge to bite the spacer at his crossguard. Jaime's next riposte came late. Steel touched steel, then parted. Their breath mingled in cold drafts. At the hall's far side, Cersei dragged herself free of the chair, leaving a trail of blood. She clutched a short blade, ornamental, its pommel carved into a lion's head. She limped, fury shining like wine-dark rubies in her eyes. Brienne's awareness split, trying to hold both twins in her sight. Jaime must have sensed it, for he redoubled his effort, driving vertical slashes that forced her retreat. They circled the cracked marble dais, where once Aegon's throne had stood, ghostly shapes among broken grandeur. 4 torches guttered in a draught, plunging half the hall into gloom. In that murk, memory blurred with present. She fought the Kingslayer on a bridge in the rain. She fought the Kingslayer beneath a weirwood sigh. She fought the Kingslayer in heart and dream. The Kingslayer who had saved her from the bear, who had sworn to keep Stark girls safe, who had made her laugh. Another clash of steel ripped sparks across her face. Jaime's breathing grew ragged. Pain etched fine lines around his eyes. She caught a glimpse of Cersei limping behind him, blade raised like a stinger. Brienne shifted weight. Jaime fighted high. She overparried and felt his pommel thud her shoulder. Pain lanced. She snarled, pivoted, and brought Oathkeeper up in a scything arc that sheared through his pauldron strap. His breastplate skewed. He staggered. She had him. One more stroke would finish it. Yet she froze. His eyes, gods, his eyes, pale green and sad and proud. A mirror of hers in that bleak hour at River Run's bath. He saw her hesitation, and impossibly smiled. "Do it," he said, voice low. "Save them all." The words tore her free. She thrust. Valyrian steel slid beneath his raised guard, point finding the juncture between mail and gorget. She felt the resistance of flesh, the hollow pop, the sudden terrifying ease as blade drank deep. Jaime's mouth fell open. No sound emerged but a surprised gasp, like a babe's first breath. His sword clattered from numb fingers. Brienne withdrew Oathkeeper in a single clean motion. Blood blossomed dark across his cuirass, shining as if jeweled. He sagged to his knees. She caught him, gentling his fall, cradling his head against her breast. Heat and wetness soaked her hauberk. "Thank you," he whispered, "for keeping the vow." Tears blurred her vision. "There was never one between us that I did not keep," she said, voice broken. She brushed sweat-damp hair from his brow, stroking as a sister might. His breath rattled, slowed, ceased. Jaime Lannister died with her name on his lips, and she felt something inside her splinter irrevocably. A shriek rent the air, raw and feral. Cersei. Brienne rose, turning. The queen lunged, blade flashing. Brienne parried, iron meeting Valyrian. Cersei's strike lacked technique, fueled only by hatred, yet desperation lent ferocity. She hacked, hissed, spat curses that might have blistered glass. Brienne circled, guarding, waiting for the moment. There, she ducked under a wild slash, pivoted behind, hammered her pommel into Cersei's wounded leg. The queen buckled. Brienne caught her throat from behind, ironclad fingers biting soft flesh. "Mercy," Cersei gurgled. Brienne tightened, dragged her across the floor to kneel at Jaime's side. The queen's perfume warred with blood's coppery stench. Cersei's hand scrabbled at Brienne's gauntlet. "He loved you," she gasped. "More than honor. More than me. And yet I killed him," Brienne answered, voice flat. "You deprived him of honor long ago. I deprived him of life. So we stand even," Cersei sobbed. Rage trembled through her limbs. "Finish it then. End the lioness. But know the realm will choke on the storm my death unleashes." "No." "The realm chokes already," Brienne said. She released Cersei's throat only to seize her jaw, forcing gaze upon the corpse at their feet. "Look on your works, Cersei of House Lannister. Look and weep for what your love has wrought." The queen stared, horror dawning. Something in her shattered too. Brienne felt it like a tremor through bone. She relinquished her hold. The knife clattered from Cersei's fingers. Brienne raised Oathkeeper. The blade hung poised at the apex of its arc, and paused, trembling. "Do this, finish it, and you carve away the last scrap of mercy in your soul." She saw Sansa's gentle poise, Arya's steel, Podrick's earnest grin, Jaime's final smile. Her muscles quivered. Cersei lunged for Jaime's sword. Instinct propelled Brienne forward. Oathkeeper flashed. Edge met bone and sinew. Cersei's head snapped sideways, a thin spray of crimson marking the air. She collapsed atop her brother, breath stuttering. Brienne stepped back, chest heaving. The hall fell silent, but for torch crackle. A distant roar, perhaps a street riot, perhaps a dragon's aerial pass, echoed beyond the walls. Brienne stared down at the twin bodies twined like children lost in sleep, blood pooling, mingling, dark as wine. Something cold settled in her chest, hollowing her. Footsteps approached. Alejandro, David. The others filed in, bodies streaked with guard blood, gazes wary. "It's done?" David asked. Brienne did not answer. She knelt, closed Jaime's eyes, then Cersei's. Her tears did not fall. They had frozen somewhere deep before birth. "We finish at the cellars," she said at last, voice distant to her own ears. "The wildfire caches. Burn the throne room, the stores, the banners. Let no tyrant rise from these stones again." Alander nodded grimly. They dispersed to lay pitch and spark. Brienne lingered by the corpses, a silent sentinel. The hearth shadows stretched long as funeral shrouds. Night deepened. When at last David returned with a torch, she accepted flame without ceremony. 5 minutes, he warned. Then the green fire consumes all. Brienne rose. She spared one final glance at Jaime and Cersei Lannister, twins in birth, twins in death, and wondered if somewhere beyond they clasped hands in a happier realm. She would never know. No living soul could. She turned, cloak swirling, and strode into the corridors of Maegor's Holdfast. Behind her, the first tongues of wildfire ignited, emerald light staining the windows like corrupted dawn. The Red Keep began to burn from within, a pyre for lions and oathbreakers alike. And Brienne of Tarth walked onward through smoke and sorrow, seeking a dawn that might absolve her sin, though she suspected no such dawn existed, not for the likes of her, a knight who had chosen the path of the killer. But still, She walked. Because walking was all that remained. Inca. The corridor exhaled ember-tainted air as Brienne followed its curve down toward the lower vaults, boots sounding hollow on stone that had once echoed with Tywin's iron procession and Joffrey's shrill demands. Each heartbeat carried the growing rumble of wildfire devouring chambers above. A beast clawing outward from Maegor's ancient gut. Tangled skeins of smoke crept along the ceiling. In their sinuous swirls, she glimpsed faces she knew. Podrick, kindly Sept and Maribald. Van Rhaevyard. Even her father's stern regard. They drifted, dissolved. She pressed on, gripping a torch so fiercely her gauntlet creaked. At the second turn, she found the Summer Islanders waiting. Corsi and Jagan, each dark as burnt oak, eyes gleaming behind soot-smeared silk veils. They had sacked a larder on their sweep. Sacks bulged with jars of saffron and wheels of hard Tyroshi cheese, likely meant for Cersei's dwindling feasts. Brienne motioned them ahead toward the sally they'd mapped earlier. The plan remained. Scatter into the warrens beneath the city, then slip free through Flea Bottom's maze before the Goldcloaks could seal gates. But plans, she knew, were gentle creatures. Flame and fate butchered them with equal cheer. The staircase tightened, coiling into the cellars. Here, the air grew wet. Walls sweating memory of the Blackwater. She passed rusted iron doors buckled by past explosions. Floor scored by claws of green fire, unborn yet ever hungry. Twice the torch guttered as unseen drafts chased her, forcing her to cup flame against chest, like frail life itself. At last, she reached the vault where wildfire pots once slumbered by the thousands. Racks now stood empty, save for dust and calcined shards. Tyrion's scheme had emptied these caches years before, but the stone still remembered. A feeble emerald glimmer pulsed in its fissures, as if the substance's ghost grinned from hidden seams. Brienne knelt, brushed a mailed finger across the floor. The grit glittered faintly, then dull. Even ashes of wildfire held menace. Footsteps skittered in the passage behind. David appeared, crossbow cradled, eyes watering from smoke. "Outer yards clear," he rasped. The Dornishman and the archer took 5 cloaks at the kennel gate. Quiet work. But more troops mass at Mudgate. "We must leave now." Brienne rose. "The throne room roofs are ablaze." "Ay." Your spark roared like a dragon's cough. "Anyone with half a wit will flee the keep." He paused, glancing toward the spiraling stair. "Did you?" She understood the unfinished question. Had she lingered in farewell, in penance, in grief? There was no language for what she had done. Better to shoulder silence. She pushed past him, torch held high. "We go." They retraced their route through the belly of Maegor's holdfast. Smoke thickened. Sparks skittered like fireflies in drafts that roared suddenly along corridors, flaming tapestries to whirling brands. Twice they dragged aside sagging beams still bleeding pitch. Somewhere above, stone thundered as an upper floor collapsed, blasting a hot wind that hurled David to one knee. They forged onward until a cold gust kissed their cheeks. Open air. The postern arch yawned on the east face of the outer wall, half concealed behind a sculpted thorn hedge blasted bare by last year's siege. Beyond stretched a narrow bridge spanning the dry inner moat, its oak planks warped but intact. The mantlet breaker Alandra waited at midpoint, silhouette rigid, bow strung. Beside him the northerner Heron knelt over a trussed guard, quietly slicing throat to hush his groans. With them clustered the rest of their ragtag cohort, faces ghostly in torch glow. When Brienne stepped onto planks they parted, instinctively granting her the van. Flame-lit night framed her figure. Armor streaked black. Cloak ragged, golden sword hilt grim with blood already cooling to rust. No one spoke as they crossed. The red keep behind was a volcano of slanted towers coughing reddish-green sparks, skyward. A current of dread whispered through masonry. Even seasoned sellswards glanced back as if the castle itself might leap after them. When they reached the far bank, Brienne scanned the darkness. Below flowed a servant road skirting the hillside toward the river gate. To east and south, faint cries drifted, panic unspooling as watchers spied the palace burning. Bells began clanging in ragged discord, first from the great Septus remnant towers, then from Baylor's Field, where camp chapels had sprung. The alarms fused into an iron chorus. Brienne led them down a goat path into briar-strewn gardens once pruned for princesses. Now weeds choked marble nymphs with thorned garlands, and broken lanterns glimmered among nettles like fallen stars. Smoke rolled overhead in woolly banks that blotted the moon. Red reflections flickered across every leaf, turning dew to blood beads. They reached an ivy-masked culvert, where runoff channels emptied from the hill. Hurried hands cleared debris. One by one they slid inside. The passage stank of mold and rat droppings, scaled with mineral crusts from centuries of seep, yet it angled steadily downward, soon merging with an older storm drain big enough to stand in. The city above receded to muffled thunder until even the bells were swallowed by dripping dark. Only the hiss of far-off fire remained, like rain on a forge. Brienne signaled halt at a crossroads of tunnels. Here the brickwork changed, older, laid when Aegon's children still ruled. She pressed palm to mossy corner. Dampness seeped through glove, cooling the fever of battle. In the hush, she heard her own heart. Slow, deliberate, but tremulous beneath the measured cadence. She thought the pulse would quicken in victory, yet it felt thin, exhausted. Perhaps triumph was a child's fancy. Grown folk found only reprieve. Elander shuffled beside her. Left branch meets the old leech gate beneath Cobbler's Square, he whispered. Spits us near the alley of milk sellers. From there we scatter. Brienne nodded. 2 incendiaries are set by the gatehouse. When the keep falls, the guard may flood those alleys hunting us. We split pairs. She looked over faces smeared black. Corsi, cheeks shining with sweat. Jagan, eyes hard. Heron the archer, his lined visage unreadable. Should any be caught, confess nothing. Say you're thieves seeking larder spoils. No. Sarah, the fatherless girl, grunted amusement. Bloody rich thieves, armed like hedge knights. Coin buys any tale in this city, Brienne said. And if coin fails, silence is shield enough. David tapped her pauldron. What of you? I go north, she answered before thought could weigh alternatives. Toward the Trident. The Stark Queen will learn what transpired. Stark Queen? Harren echoed, voice rasping through old guilt. Does the realm hold queens still? Looks to me like fire and fools rule now. No. Brienne saw the specter of Renly's murder in his eyes, of Bolton flayings, of endless betrayals etched into northern frost. She said, there must be rulers tempered by duty, else we drown in tyranny's ash. If not Sansa, then another. But some word of tonight must pass unsullied through rumor's jaws. She touched the parchment tucked beneath her breastplate. Her brief account signed in her sprawling hand, sealed with a dollop of wax mixed with a flake of golden enamel shaved from Oathkeeper's hilt. Not a royal sigil, yet perhaps weighty enough for a maester's ledger. She took the left-hand tunnel. The others followed until, at the next fork, pairs drifted apart with quiet farewells. No embraces, no vows. Such things had cost them all too dear. Alandro clapped Brienne's shoulder before veering into a shaft sloping west. Harren shuffled off with Corsi to scout flea-bottom passages. Soon only Davit remained at her flank. Step light despite crossbow, and stuffed satchel. Thought Utaroshi valued survival over causes. She murmured, aware each word might echo to unfriendly ears. I value stories, he replied. If I die, let it be one bard's mouth with relish. And what tale richer than the fall of lions at a maiden knight's hand? She almost smiled at maiden, a sobriquet long since whittled to barbs by sniggering knights. But David's tone bore no mockery, only a gambler's admiration for improbable dice. Then keep close, she said. The ending may yet twist. Water pooled ankle deep. Rats scurried along ledges. squeaking protest. Twice they ducked into side sluices while patrol boots clanged overhead on street gratings. The city roiled above. The bells now mixed with panicked cries, with the brassy drone of war horns from the harbor. Dawn's first pallor seeped through grates, lending the corridor an undersea hue. At last, pale shafts widened ahead. The leech gate. Twisted iron bars blocked the exit, padlocked and flecked with verdigris. Brienne prized a dagger point into the rivet anchoring hasp to stone. Metal groaned. David wedged his crossbow stirrup as lever. With combined force, the hinge snapped. They eased bars inward, squinting into the pre-dawn gloom of Cobbler's Square. Rain drifted, a gentle mist softening charred scents. But screams still carried on wind from the hill. Green flashes spattered the clouds, wildfire bursts venting as the Red Keep's bones splintered. Brienne scanned the square. No cloaks, only beggars crouched beneath rag roofs and a lone baker's boy gaping at the jade glow licking the sky. She stepped onto slick cobblestones. Immediately fatigue crashed over her, limbs trembling now that Peril's lash relaxed. Blood dried stiff under plates. Every bruise announced itself. Yet, there was farther to go. "We part," she told David. "Head for the quays. Higher passage east, while chaos favors anonymity." He gave half bow. "May we meet again where the wine pours sweeter." He pressed a coin into her palm, a Taroshi crescent of sky-blue glass. "For luck." Brienne watched him fade into a wind veiled by laundry lines. Then she turned north. She kept to back alleys past shuttered shops, skirting mobs already forming outside burned granaries. Rumor traveled faster than crows. Some shouted that dragons had returned. Others swore the spider's ghosts had set the palace aflame. Still others babbled of treasonous northerners. None knew truth, and truth gave no comfort anyway. She pulled her cloak tighter, hiding distinctive height, even stooped. She towered, but night's shadows and a baker's flowered dust on her cheeks, disguised enough for now. At Pigfoot, way two gold cloaks blocked passage, spears cross-set. One waved bedraggled civilians aside, shouting questions about arsonists, describing a woman knight, big as a warhorse, with a sword of black steel. Brienne glanced down at Oathkeeper concealed beneath cloak folds. Valyrian dark ripples could betray her if torchlight caught. She ducked into a tannery yard, enduring the stench of lye while she scaled its reeking rear wall. Slipping across flat rooftops crusted with pigeon droppings, she angled northwest. Thunder cracked behind, perhaps another vault collapsing. She did not turn. Hours passed beneath a dull copper dawn. Twice she aided injured small folk trapped under toppled stalls, prying beams with mailed arms. Once she shared leather-wrapped cheese with a gaggle of orphan girls who thanked her in lilting accents of the Reach. With each deed, a whisper in her head said the same. Jaime might have done so. She wondered if that whisper was remembrance or culpability. By mid-morning she reached the Gate of the Gods, but its arch bristled with spears. Refugees crushed forward, pleading exit. Guards battered them back. Brienne slipped into a throng of onion sellers hauling carts. She kept hood low, gaze on flagstones. A sergeant singled her out, perhaps sensing the coiled vigor beneath coarse cloak. He demanded travel papers. She produced a sealed missive bearing Lord Tarley's broken sigil. Spoils from an abandoned command tent near Highgarden during the Reach campaign. The sergeant squinted at Wax, uncertain. Before suspicion sharpened, she pressed the Taroshi glass coin into his gauntlet. He grunted satisfaction, waved her through. Beyond the gate stretched the King's Road, flanked by fields now blighted gray-brown from ash storms of dragonfire. Small folk streamed north, ox carts, palfreys, haggard footmen leading children with blistered feet. Columns of Unsullied stood sentinel, where Daenerys' legion still camped, spears gleaming like a winter wheat field beneath pale sun. Rumor said the Dragon Queen had vanished the night of the palace blaze. Her great beast last seen wheeling west toward the sunset sea. Some whispered she had melted on Dragonback, consumed by guilt. Others that assassins slew her. Brienne cared only that the Unsullied ignored passers-by unless provoked. Quiet threaters might slip north unchallenged. She walked until feet numbed, accepted water from a kindly reachman driving sheep. Noon slid by. Then afternoon. Shadows grew long when the King's Road forked near the ruin of the northern supply depot. This spur skated the Blackwater rush toward Stonehenge before merging the river road into the Trident Highway. She veered off, trading crowds for lonesome ruts, where smoke still curled from razed villages. Ravens gossiped overhead. Dragon scorch lay everywhere. Blackened orchards, melted wheel rims, once white bones half buried in ditch silt. The devastation sickened her, yet hardened resolve. The realm must see this. Name it crime, remember. At dusk. At dusk, she camped inside a hollow beach overlooking the river. Muscles throbbed from duel and march. She loosened cuirass straps, hissing at bruises the size of skulls. The arrow gouge on her shoulder where Jaime's pommel struck wept fluid beneath crust. In firelight she cleaned and stitched it, dabbing vinegar while teeth clenched. Pain steadied thought. She must live, if only to bear witness. Night sounds rose, owl hoots, distant wolf howls, across the river plain. Brienne ate jerky, sipped river water boiled in her helm. Memories ambushed her between swallows. Jaime's final smile. Cersei's shriek, the sudden quiet when steel parted flesh. She relived it until her gut churned. How many men had she slain in war? Yet this kill felt unlike battlefield clamor, intimate, irrevocable. She pictured Tyrion, wherever exile led him. What would he feel when word reached? What would Podrick think? Would he turn away in horror from his kingly knight? The thought carved deeper than arrowheads. She slept little. Dawn bruised horizon violet when hoofbeats rattled her branches. She snapped awake, palm on sword. Below, 3 riders in crusted mail guided lean mounts along the bank. Their cloaks bore the chained stag of House Swift. She slid deeper into hollow shadow. The riders dismounted near the water, refilling skins, chatting in low tones about bounties on the she-titan of Tarth. 50 dragons, dead or alive, they bragged. Apparently Queen's men, Cersei loyalists still breathing, had posted reward before palace fire. The burnt keep's ruin only doubled zeal. Brienne considered slipping away, but hunger nudged boldness. She whistled softly, imitating a lapwing. The horses jerked. The men froze. She leapt from the tree, landing behind them with sword half drawn. "Leave your mounts and coin," she said, voice hoarse from disuse. They spun, hands darting to hilts. She let cloak fall, revealing full height and mail, and the unmistakable dark ripples of Oathkeeper. Recognition widened their eyes. The tallest laughed, though fear tinged it. "By the mother, the bounty walks to us." She advanced 2 paces. "Choose. Live horseless or die." Spurs rasped cement. The first man lunged, mace sweeping clumsy. She sidestepped, pommel smacking temple. He collapsed in reeds. Second drew dagger, but hesitation crippled stroke. She disarmed him, broke his wrist, kicked him into water. The third bolted for his horse. She flung dagger. Handle thudded between shoulder blades, enough to tumble him. He lay gasping. Brienne gathered reins, cut purses from belts. 20 silver stags, handful of copper stars. Scant, but bread enough. She bound their wrists with tack straps and left them under looming threat of returning wolves. 2 mounts meant speed. She chose the sturdier roan, setting north at trot, leading spare gelding. The King's Road ahead wound through ravaged crownlands toward the rolling green of the riverlands where rebuilding flickered. Sansa reportedly held court from River Run. Relief flooded her veins when towers of that castle finally crept into view 6 days later. But reaching it demanded stealth. Lannister stragglers infested backwoods. Khalasar raiders crossed the Sea of Dothraki, still roaming free after Queen Daenerys' liberation. Without their Khaleesi, many drifted west pillaging. Brienne skirted hamlets, slept in haystacks. Twice she hid beneath weirwood roots, while hooves thundered overhead. Each sunrise stretched taut with questions. Had word of Jaime's death flown faster? Did ravens already blacken Tarth's skies with her father's grief? On the 8th day she crossed the tumbling tumblestone at Pink Maiden's ruined bridge, where makeshift ferries now shuttled refugees. She paid passage with 2 stags, sharing deck with a family from Fair Isle whose farm had been torched by Greyjoy reavers prowling Burnt Shield Archipelago. Their youngest son, flax-haired and scab-kneed, stared wide-eyed at her sword. She let him touch the hilt, telling gentler tales of knights who kept promises. When they docked, he gifted her a carved walnut ship, a token his grandsire had whittled. She tucked it beside the Taroshi glass coin. Symbols, fragile yet potent. Riverland's fields showed first shy shoots of barley. Spring's resilience nibbling charred stubble. Small folk here bore haunted looks but still waved to travelers. At roadside inns she heard gossip swirl. Queen Cersei slain, Dragon Queen vanished. A rank of new claimants sprouting like weeds. Gendry Baratheon forging legitimacy under Storm's shadow. Prince Aegon raised banners in Old Town. Even mercenary captains styling themselves protectors. Chaos, fertile soil for tyranny, unless a better seed took root. Brienne pressed on. At dusk of the 10th day, Riverrun's towers glowed rose in setting sun. Banners of the direwolf stitched with tulip sigils fluttered. House Stark, overlaid by Tully. An emblem of alliance sealed when Sansa wed Edmure's eldest. Some moons passed. The union, rumor said, was more treaty than passion. But alliances seldom tasted sweet. Necessity salted every bite. Guards at the outer barbican hailed her. She dismounted, drawing back hood. Recognition sparked. A sergeant she had once sparred during Brynden Blackfish's brief retaking. He saluted, ushered her across drawbridge. Courtyard bustle paused, as stable boys eyed the towering knight, armor dulled by journey's grime. A hush-parted crowd while she strode toward the keep. Inside the great hall, light pooled amber from rushed torches. Lady Sansa Stark. No, Queen of the North by acclaim of Winterfell and Riverlords. Sat upon a dais chair carved with recurring wolf motifs. She appeared ethereal in dusk blue wool, auburn hair flowing unbound. A hush fell deeper as Brienne advanced, helm under arm, dusted boots echoing. Sansa's eyes widened. She rose. Sir Brienne, she breathed. We feared the worst. Come, stand by me. Brienne knelt instead, sword tip kissed to flagstone. Your Grace, I bear tidings heavy as sin. Meant she. Sansa motioned attendants away, descending step. She touched Brienne's pauldron. Rise, you have ever borne my trust. Speak freely. Brienne rose. Words crowded throat, yet refused order. At last she drew parchment, held it like kindling about to ignite. In King's Landing 8 nights past I slew Jaime and Cersei Lannister. The hall gasped. Cross murmurs rippled among courtiers. Tule knights, northern scribes, Vale emissaries. Sansa's face remained composed, though sorrow flickered in eyes remembering a dogged escort, who once saved her from mob's assault. Brienne continued, voice low but firm. They plotted fresh terrors. Food stores hoarded. Sellsword fleets contracted to starve the city. Children already died of hunger. I led a small band through the keep. Jaime opposed me. I did what oath demanded. She recounted wildfire's flame, palace collapse, her escape. She spoke of devastation glimpsed along the road, of rumors swirling like vultures. When silence settled, Sansa guided her to a carved bench. You chose torment, not triumph. The queen murmured, reading the weariness etched in Brienne's frame. Your soul must ache. Brienne stared at clasped hands. A knight swears to protect, but I wonder if by killing him, I slew the last man who believed in my honor. Emotion cracked final word. She looked away, ashamed. Sansa knelt before her, lifting gaze until Brienne met it. Jaime believed in you because you embodied honor. An honorable deed weighs heavy. Yes, yet the realm's breath may rest steadier for it. We will hear evidence, gather accounts, judge with reason unshackled by rumor. She stood, voice rising. Let it be recorded, Sir Brienne of Tarth came to Riverrun under safe conduct, bearing witness to crimes of the fallen crown. A clerk hurried to inscribe. Another courtier whispered of council summons. Yet Sansa dismissed them for a moment, offering Brienne lodging in Western Tower, a healer to salve wounds, hot bread thick with butter. Brienne bowed gratitude but requested modest quarters among the guard. She felt undeserving of soft linens. Straw and stone offered firmer absolution. That night she lay on cot smelling of vinegar and straw, listening to keep's quiet, banners rustling, distant croak of frogs in moat, footfalls of sentries muffled by rush mats. Sleep slipped evasive. She drifted into half-dreams where green fire chased her through corridors lined by mirrors reflecting every choice she'd made, each reflection a Brienne slightly altered. One who spared Jaime, one who died beside him, one who never drew Valyrian blade. At corridor's end stood a door half open. Through it shone dawnlight. She reached, but the latch seared like red-hot iron. She woke. Sweat slicked. Morning brought council summons. Highborn faces ringed oak table. Edmure Tully leaner, sterner. Jan Royce in burnished plate. Lady Barbary Dustin representing northern clans. Even Davos Seaworth, now Lord of Rainwood, summoned for his plain wisdom. Brienne recounted, answering queries about timeline, motives, companions. Some questioned legality. Others lauded decisive stroke. She accepted both with same stoic nod. Praise felt scarcely less painful than condemnation. When proceedings closed, Davos lingered. The Onion Knight studied her with kind concern. Heavy tides make strong sailors, he said. But waves break stone given time, don't shoulder alone. She attempted a smile. I have Oathkeeper, for brace. Valyrian steel props flesh, not spirit. He pressed a carved antler token into her palm. Sigil of House Seaworth. When north grows cold, Rainwood hearth is warm. Brienne pocketed token beside ship and glass crescent. Gifts weighed less than guilt, yet warmed pockets when wind bit. Days passed in council thrashings. Word from King's Landing confirmed palace ruin. The wildfire collapse had miraculously limited itself to Royal Hill, sparing crowded districts. Queen's Guard remnants now pled fealty to Lord Commander Grey Worm, who maintained martial stewardship until civil authority formed. Ravens arrived from Storm's End. Gendry sought Sansa's alliance against remaining Lannister loyalists. From Old Town, Aegon's envoys pressed claims. Chaos indeed. Sansa drafted cautious replies. She tasked Brienne with forming a neutral investigative company. Maesters, Septons, former city watch captains, to gather testimonies about the Lannisters' final days. A ledger of truth might anchor future peace. Brienne accepted. Work demanded travel back south. But this time, under banners of impartial record, not vengeance. She could face the ruined city, not as executioner, but witness. Perhaps there she would free Jaime's ghost from her marrow. Or perhaps ghosts never freed their hosts, only taught them to live hollow yet upright. On eve of departure, she climbed Riverrun's tallest turret. Twilight dyed the tumblestone gold. Swallows wheeled, stitching sky with swift arcs. She drew Oathkeeper, laying blade across knees while sitting upon parapet. Steel reflected setting sun, each ripple a secret memory. Bathhouse laughter, bear pit's roar, the trembling hush after fatal thrust. She spoke softly to the river wind. I kept the vow. Yet I break within. Teach me how to mend. The river answered with low chuckle against pilings. Behind, footsteps scuffed. Sansa approached, cloak dancing. She rested hand on Brienne's shoulder. We mend by moving forward, she said, as if hearing prayer. Not by forgetting, but by weaving grief into purpose. Brienne sheathed sword. The motion felt slightly easier than yesterday, though pain lingered. She rose, towering even over rampart, yet shoulders less burdened. Then let tomorrow's ride begin the weaving. They stood together until sun slipped, watching for stars ignite. Tiny fires that neither devoured city nor seared conscience, but guided travelers along dark roads. And somewhere, those roads would converge with stories yet unwritten. Tales of fragile treaties, of wolves and dragons, of broken swords reforged into plowshares. Whether Brienne's hand would harvest peace or raise blade again, she could not know. But as night took full hold, she touched the tokens in her pouch. A glass coin, a wood chip, an antler chip. Beneath her glove they warmed, faint but present. Small mercies, like embers cupped against chill. She closed fist around them and inhaled deep the scents of river and hawthorn and distant hearths. Her breath steadied. Dawn would come as dawn always did, indifferent to sin and sorrow, promising only new light upon old wounds. She would ride into that light, armored in loss, yet guided by oath, her story still unfolding one measured step at a time. Okay. Mist lifted from the tumblestone in pale banners when Brienne of Tarth rode out of River Run, the river's hush lapping at hooves like a mournful lullaby. 4 companions rode with her. First came Maester Edric Coleman of the Green Fork, a stoop-shouldered scholar whose gray robes dragged the earth and whose satchel bulged with scrolls, inks, clay tablets for seal impressions. Next rode Septon Muriel, once of the Starry Sept, her hair shorn in penitence, soft eyes shining above the faded sunburst, stitched onto a wool mantle far too thin for the lingering chill. Beside them ambled Sir Harrist Footley, former captain in the city watch, thick in the chest, with a pock-marred face and a gold cloak's instinct for every rustle in a hedge. And last, lanky and earnest, sat Podrick Payne, his cheeks older, jaw firmer but gaze still carrying the sunlit wonder of pages and songs. He had ridden through the night from the Vale the moment Sansa's raven reached him, insisting no ledger of truth would be honest unless he bore witness too. Brienne had tried to protest. His smile disarmed her. "You once said a good squire stays," he'd replied. "I would be a good knight in turn." Their banner was a plain white field, a promise of neutrality in lands that trusted no colors. Fastened to a staff that Maester Coleman carried, the cloth snapping like a cautious heartbeat. Dawn's first gold found the party already 3 leagues south of River Run, keeping a measured pace so Edric's mule and Muriel's sway-backed gelding would not founder. Mist beaded on plate and mail, breath fogged before lips. Brienne rode at point, habit of war hard to break, Oathkeeper a familiar weight against her thigh. She had told herself the road back to King's Landing would feel cleaner, freed from the urgency of blades. Yet each milestone seemed a gravestone remembering what she had taken. She tried to count river birds, to name wildflowers waking in spring ditches, anything to drown the memory of steel sliding into Jaime's breast. But memory clung like spider silk. Every time the wind shifted, she thought she smelled the red keep burning. By noon, clouds bunched, and the sky resolved to a slow, soaking rain. They found cover in the shell of a septry torched months earlier by passing Dothraki. Charred beams opened to gray heavens, pews scattered like ribs. Septon Muriel murmured prayers as she brushed ash from a cracked font. Brienne knelt and cupped rainwater into the bowl so Muriel might anoint herself. The Septon's thin fingers shivered, but made the sign of the 7 with utter steadiness. Maester Coleman produced a wax board. "If you please, Sir Brienne, record the date and what we observe here. Every witness begins with the land itself." She wrote, "On the 2nd day of the 3rd moon post-falling of the keep, we arrived at the septry of Saint Winifred. All 12 brothers and sisters dead, their bones unburied. Burned scarring indicates Dothraki raid. Sacristy stripped. Rain seeps through nave. The act of writing steadied her more than prayers. Letters marched neat as soldiers. Facts did not bleed, did not bleed. When they mounted again, she felt faintly stronger. They spent that night in a hunter's lean-to above Maidenpool. Rain drummed, frogs croaked, and the air stank of wet leather and horsetail. Around a smoky cookfire of green birch, Coleman sketched maps while Harris drilled Podrick in sword reversal grips. Brienne listened to the scrape of steel. The cautions murmured, "Lead with hip, not shoulder, lad. A big foe will read your arms before your feet, and remembered a one-handed knight once drilling her so." She excused herself, palms itching, and walked into drizzle until the firelight died behind trunks. She pressed forehead to a beach, letting bark bite skin until ache dulled other aches. By the 5th day, they gained the ruins of Duskendale. Here, hundreds congregated in makeshift markets, bartering mildew-specked grain for cracked spearheads, goat cheese for healing herbs. These folk eyed the white banner with suspicion. Neutrality seemed a luxury of safer provinces. Brienne sought the master of the Dock Guildhall, a square-jawed woman named Hera Quince, who guided refugees and enforced a rough rule that no blades be drawn within sight of the charred Dun fort. Hera sat them at a scarred table, served beer thin as memory, and answered Coleman's queries in a voice hoarse from shouting orders. "Cersei's men?" Hera huffed. "They bled us till Dragon Queen torched their siege wagons." After the fire, Gold Cloaks retreated, but levies of House Stokeworth filled the gap. "Same boots, different sigil. We've starved since," Coleman wrote. Muriel listened, tears shining. Harris checked shadows near the door. Hera's fingers drummed. "A ledger won't mend my walls, sir. What will your queen do with your truths?" "Truth is mortar," Brienne answered. "Strong law rises on it. Weak law crumbles. Well. See you bring stone with the words." They camped outside town under an apple bough heavy with half-formed fruit. During night watch, Podrick broke silence. "Lady, I saw him, you know, in the Vale before I left." "He asked after you, wanted to know if you kept your oath to Lady Stark." Brienne stared into darkness. "And did you answer?" "I said you keep every oath you make." He smiled like that was worth something. Rain pattered leaves overhead. Brienne said nothing more, and Podrick did not push. But when watch ended, he set his own cloak atop her as she dozed, though his blanket was thin enough to show the stars when wind lifted it. Inlands, the King's Road unfurled through rolling heath, where summer's burn still showed in black patches. They shared the route with a merchant train bearing eerie slate, with ironborn reavers escorted to Old Town dungeons, with barefoot penitents singing hymns whose words drowned in the rattle of cartwheels. One dusk, horns brayed behind. A Baratheon outrider column, blue banners of Gendry's new stag unfurling. The Lord of Storm's End rode at head, forge brawny, ring mail gleaming. He hailed Brienne by name. Somehow news of her deed galloped faster than ravens. He greeted her with regret for Jaime, with praise for courage, invited her to join his push on the capital. She declined, citing neutrality. His eyes, so like Robert's and yet gentler, shadowed. "Neutral roads become battlefields quick," he warned. "I aim to seat a council to keep this realm whole. Will your parchment hold men's swords aside?" "It must," she answered, "or we have all failed." Gendry clasped her wrist in farewell. Metal calloused fingers squeezed once. "If truth needs hammering, send word." 2 nights later they left the King's Road, angling west over scrub, where no patrols roamed. Harris led them on goat tracks, saying straight paths belonged to dead men and tax collectors. They reached Blackwater's north bank at dawn. Smoke still curled from the destroyed granaries Sansa's scouts had reported. Fields lay salted by stray dragonfire. Charcoal skeletons of orchards poked a sky gone brittle blue. Brienne tasted ashes each breath. They forded at shallow flats, water tugging greaves, horses snorting at unseen currents. King's Landing skyline rose ahead, familiar towers now jagged. Greykeep half collapsed, scabbed with green glassy streaks where wildfire had vitrified stone. Crows spiraled above the ruins in slow, greedy gyres. A cordon of unsullied ringed the river gate. Spears bristled, shields unstained, discipline unweathered despite months in alien lands. Grey Worm himself waited astride a pale horse, helm under arm. His eyes, flat as winter pools, flicked over the white pennon, over Brienne, over the companions. He dismounted, boots splashing thin mud. "Purpose," he said without preamble. Brienne dismounted too. Rain and travel scum streaked her cloak, yet she drew to full height. "We bear writ of Queen Sansa Stark, recognized by Riverrun and the Riverlords, establishing a neutral inquest into the actions of the late Queen Cersei and Lord Jaime Lannister." She offered the parchment. Grey Worm skimmed seals, lips tightening. When he spoke, each word felt weighed. "You killed them." "I did," Brienne said. He studied her as though judging strength of a wall before rams. "Their deaths ended threat to my people. For that, I do not mourn. But the city remains fragile. Conquerors leave, but wounds stay. Your presence may reopen them." Brienne bowed her head. "We will tread lightly. Speak to whomever is willing, record without force, pay fairly for any service. We ask escort only into the still tower, to establish our scriptorium." Grey Worm considered, then nodded once. "You may have 2 barrack rooms and ferried access within first ring. No armed patrols beyond your own swords. Break this, and you leave." Ser Harist bristled. Brienne stilled him with glance. "Agreed." They passed under portcullis, studded with new timber patches. Inside, devastation swelled. Tenement blocks sagged like rotted teeth. Crevasses split cobbles where wildfire pots had vented. The great sept's shattered dome yawned like the skull of a giant. Yet, life persisted. Street vendors sold onion broth from cauldrons blackened by dragon flame. Children threaded rubble playing at dragons and wolves, and carpenters raised scaffolds of fresh pine smelling of sap and determination. Grey Worm soldiers led them to the still tower, an austere granary left standing near the city archives. Its upper floors offered windows, and more importantly, intact stairs. They stabled horses in a courtyard littered with broken millstones, then climbed to a chamber whose shutters opened on the smoldering ruin of the throne hill. There, the maester unpacked inks, Muriel set up a prayer stool, Podrick laid blankets, and Brienne stood before a warped window watching smoke ghosts writhe around gutted spires. She breathed slow to quiet the phantom hammering of her heart. Work began before noon. They divided tasks. Muriel sought out septons, silent sisters, and midwives who might speak of ration seizures. Coleman visited guildmasters and scribes. Harist prowled taverns listening for watch gossip. Podrick accompanied each, bright eyes and steady quill, and at dusk returned to read his hurried notes aloud. The first testimony came from old Farah, a washerwoman whose wrinkled hands shook as she poured watered wine. "The Queen, God spit her. She took our wheat for the royal larder. Promised payment when the Lyseni fleet arrived. Fleet never came. We ate rat cut with sawdust. Some boiled shoe leather. Small folk buried children in night because tears wasted water." She described guards whipping her husband until lungs hemorrhaged when he begged for crumbs. She described Jaime walking the linen yard one evening, pressing 3 silver stags into her palm when no one watched. Said he was sorry for the sins of lions. Tears tracing dirt channels. Coleman captured every word. Brienne drank them like poison. Next day, brought gold cloak Pate, gaunt, eyes darting. He required coin to speak. Harist's knack. Pat told of secret conclaves where Jaime begged Cersei to open storehouses. Begged, mind you, Pate emphasized, nose snuffling. Her Grace called him craven. Said fear unmanned him. Ordered him from council. He left white as bone. When wildfire burned the keep, Pate watched Jaime's remaining personal guard chain doors of the holdfast to keep mob out. I think he meant to protect them, but fire cares not. Brienne listened. Stricken. Each account twisted love and pity anew. Grey Worm visited on 4th morning. He entered without flourish, inspecting stacked parchments. Your ledger grows, he observed. Truth grows like ivy, Coleman replied. Cut one part, 2 shoots appear. Grey Worm's gaze rested on Brienne. The city council meets at dusk in the Dragon Pit ruins. They should hear your early findings. Brienne hesitated. We are not yet ready. Chaos does not wait for readiness, Grey Worm said, and left. That dusk they climbed the hill where once dragons chained rumbled. Now the shell of the pit served assembly of factions jostling to carve future. Lanterns swung from beams like captured moons, casting motley glare across delegates. Grey Worms unsullied in 10 deep ranks, envoys of House Baratheon, green stags embroidered, Tyrell cousins representing Reach Harvest Might, Bravosi bankers with ledgers longer than Coleman's, ragged former small councillors. Even a ragtag clutch of Golden Company sellswords, who Brienne stepped onto cracked days, where once dragon keepers rang chains. Murmurs rolled like distant surf, as whispers named her. Kingslayer's Bane, Oath Giant, Lady Death. She produced not blade but parchment. Coleman stood at shoulder, delivering details of food stockpiles, of children's graves, of Jaime's pleas. She cited names, cross-checked numbers with guild ledgers. Sept and Miriel swore under light of 7 lanterns that statements were sworn before the 7. Silence thickened until you could hear timber straining overhead. A Reach envoy scoffed. Pretty words. Proof? Any copper sells his story these days. Number 1. Coleman lifted a wax tablet bearing sigils of butchers, bakers, fishmongers' guilds, each impressed by guild seal and witnessed by unsullied notary. The envoy's retort shriveled. Gendry's captain, broad and scar-cheeked, rose. So the lioness starved her cubs. Fine. Dead is dead. What matters is who rules now. He jabbed a finger at Grey Worm. Your lot hold walls. My lord wields Storm's End's lances. The north sits behind River Run bark. We need seats, not stories. Brienne answered before Grey Worm could. Stone laid on rotten footings will tumble. We offer mortar. These facts, ugly though they be, can anchor new law. So no queen hoards bread while babies choke. Elect a council. Choose a monarch or none. But swear upon this ledger, and let every holdfast keep a copy. Then, when ambition flares, folk may point to record and say... A hush followed. Lanterns flickered. Somewhere in dark rafters a bat chittered. It was then Captain Tregar Ormelin of the Golden Company strode forward, cloak rustling gold embroidery. Sweet sentiments, he purred. Yet how trust scribbles penned by butchered kingslayers. The she-knight admits she slew Lord Jaime. Perhaps she burned the keep too, to hide crime. Reactions erupted. A surge of angry shouts. Spears angled. Podrick's face blanched. Harris shifted toward Brienne, hand on pommel. Grey Worm raised 2 fingers. Unsullied ranks stomped once, silence falling like an axe. Brienne answered only with calm. Truth need not be comfortable. I will kneel to any impartial examination. Present your witnesses, Captain. Tregar smiled fox-like. I shall. He snapped fingers. 2 men hauled a crate onto the floor, prying lid to reveal shards of green glass and twisted iron, wildfire pot fragments. Found this morning beneath sewer outlet near River Run's camps. He turned, slow circle. Proof the North rigs more charges, poised to finish what they began. Gasps rippled. Unsullied murmured. Baratheon envoy scowled at Brienne. In her skull, Brienne heard again the thunder of wildfire. Tasted plague of guilt. Yet logic shouted louder. Shards near River Run's camp. She had left from that castle. No wildfire traveled that far. Planting evidence seemed obvious. Grey Worm motioned, and an unsullied commander inspected glass. False, he proclaimed, voice ringing. These shards still warm. Fired in last day. Wildfire cools to ember overnight, then chills dead. Also resin seal bears, mark of Pyromancer's Guild smashed after the fall. North stocks none. Brienne exhaled slow. Tregar's smile faltered. He retreated into shadows, but seeds of doubt had been flung. Council adjourned amid bickering. Grey Worm walked Brienne to Tower Gate. "Captain Ormelin schemes to stir war between you and Reach," he said. "We will watch him." He paused. "Many fear your truths will bring judgment upon them too." "Truth snuffs fear by shining light," Brienne answered. "Or breeds new shadows," Grey Worm said. He saluted and strode into lamplight. That night, Podrick and Harris debated sentinel shifts, while Muriel polished each lantern wick as though cleaning sin. Brienne paced Rampart Corridor until moon climbed. She descended alone toward Palace Hill, ignoring warnings of crumbling masonry. Memory led her through breached curtain wall, through arch blackened yet standing. She found herself in what remained of the Hall of the 100 Hearths. Wind moaned through fractured vaults. Moonlight fell in ragged lances upon debris. Oathkeepers scabbard brushed rubble. Echoes scurried like mice. She stepped around a pile of shattered tile and froze. Among ash glittered gold. A hand of polished metal, fingers severed at wrist joint where molten stone must have torn it from flesh. Jaime's hand. Time stopped. She knelt, breath caged. Moonlight danced on its surface, outlining lion etchings, the joint grooves she once saw clench a sword hilt. Ash darkened 2 fingertips, as though even death could not wipe war's stain. She lifted it with both hands. Cold weight anchored her knees. Tears pricked unbidden. She pressed brow to gold knuckles, whispered, "Forgive me." The hall swallowed words, offering no answer except wind. She wrapped the relic in cloak cloth, cradled it to chest, and walked out under a broken arch into the night. Back at the tower, she woke Coleman. He blinked at the hand, eyes widening scholar-wide. "Artifact," he breathed. "Relic," she countered. "Not for ledgers, for burial." She asked Podrick to ready a shovel. At dawn they climbed the Hill of Rainies, where a lone almond tree had miraculously survived flame. Beneath its budding branches, they dug a grave no larger than a bread trench. Brienne placed the hand upon black earth. Sept and Muriel intoned a prayer to the stranger and the warrior both, voice quavering yet beautiful. Brienne added no words. Soil fell, dull and final. When they finished, birds sang timidly. Podrick squeezed her elbow. She managed a nod. That day testimonies resumed, but new tension crackled. Merchants whispered of Golden Company men disappearing into undercity tunnels with kegs. Harris' old watch contacts reported sudden shipments of pig iron ball bearings and pitch barrels. Something brewed. At twilight, a runner arrived from Grey Worm. Unsullied scouts sighted Sellswords hauling crates into the dragon pit. Brienne armed instantly. She led her companions along silent streets, moving by alley until the domed ruin loomed. Moon carved silver lines down collapsed ribs. She signaled Harris left, Podrick right, Muriel and Coleman to rear. They entered through Griffin Gate, where stone talons lay shattered. Inside, torches guttered. Shadows danced over kegs stacked in rings. Tregar O'Melon stood upon a dais, pouring green liquor into troughs that led to open brass vents. Homemade wildfire. Nearby, a pyromancer in scorched robes whispered spells. Flame rod in hand. Enough. Brienne's voice cracked like whip. Tregar whirled. Sneer warping. "Ah, the she-knight. Come bear witness to rebirth of fear." Harrist's crossbow twanged, bolt thumped keg, leaking green ooze. Vapor hissed. Pyromancer shrieked, fumbling rod. Chaos detonated. Sellswords charged spear first. Unsullied stormed through opposite archway. War cries echoing. Brienne met hammer with Oathkeeper, blade singing. Her world shrank to clang of steel and glare of torches wobbling. She parried cut aiming Podrick's back, riposted, felt armor buckle under mace, but kept footing. Coleman dragged Muriel behind fallen beam. Quill now dagger in shaking fist. The pyromancer rushed to ignite fuse. Brienne broke from melee, vaulting over barrels. Tregar lunged to intercept, blade whistling. They clashed beneath hanging chain lengths, once tethering dragons. Sparks rained. Tregar fought with sellsword viciousness. Feints like serpent strikes, kicks to knee. Brienne answered, with patient northern form Jaime taught her. Letting wait and reach talk. She battered his guard, driving him backward until his heel struck a coil of fuse. He stumbled. She seized opening, pommel smashing his temple. He sagged. But the pyromancer had touched rod to fuse. Fire hissed hungry along pitch-soaked twine, racing toward ring of kegs. Brienne slashed rope of a pulley overhead. A rusted dragon skull swayed, then crashed atop barrels, scattering them, smothering some flames. Yet sparks leapt. A gout of green fire whooshed, flinging her back. She rolled, cursing, patting, smoldering cloak. Smoke thickened with acrid tang. Grey Worm's voice thundered, "Clear the hall!" Unsullied formed shields to funnel survivors. Harris dragged Podrick, who clutched a gashed forearm but waved off help. Brienne yanked Tregar by collar, hauling unconscious man toward exit. Flame-chewed timber roared across dried guano. She sprinted last yards, heat blistering exposed skin. They burst into night as a green fireball bulged inside dome, pushing dust clouds through vents before gutters choked flame. The dragon pit shook but held. Outside, rain began, a sweet hiss on hot rubble, quenching stray sparks. Grey Worm surveyed captives, 5 sellswords bound, pyromancer singed, Tregar bleeding. He nodded at Brienne. "Your truth nearly died unborn." She wiped soot. "Truth is stubborn." She looked at Dome. But even it needs shielding. Dawn's first light revealed damage minimal. Unsullied doused fused channels. Muriel tended wounded with sage smoke and soft hymns. Coleman lifted charred scroll fragments, sighing but salvaging enough to replicate. That afternoon, a second council convened, this time at Still Tower for safety. Evidence of Tregar's sabotage lay plain. Fuses, statements by captured men, wildfire residue. Baratheon, envoy, apologized for prior doubt. Tyrell cousins offered grain to city. Braavosi bankers pledged low-interest loans contingent upon ledger publication. An accord took shape. A provisional tri-council. Baratheon for Stormlands and Crownlands. Stark for North and Riverlands. Grey Worm as protector of freedmen. Would govern 6 months while a great council of lords and commons assembled. Brienne watched signatures blot onto vellum. Her heart did not cheer, but a weight shifted. 2 nights later, she stood again beneath almond branches over Jaime's hand. She told him of the council, of Podrick's bravery, of small steps. She laid a blossom on the mound. "Your debt to realm is not forgiven." She whispered. "But perhaps your last wish nudged us toward daylight." She touched soil, felt damp cool. "I will try to walk the rest without more blood." She returned to Tower where Podrick awaited with packed saddlebags. "Where to now?" he asked. "East, to Storm's End." The ledger must be read there too. She mussed his hair. "Would you ride beside me?" He grinned. "Always, sir." Maester Coleman cleared throat. "If it please, I would accompany. Tyrell grain ships sail from Griffin's Roost soon, and a maester's hand might ensure safe loading." "Then see." Sept and Muriel smiled, bandaged fingers folding over prayer book. "Souls starve as surely as bellies." "I go where children need lullabies." Harassed Footley snorted, buckling sword. "Someone's got to keep these parchment peddlers alive." Brienne looked over them, unlikely band born of ash and midnight vows. She felt the tokens in her pouch. Glass coin, wooden ship, antler chip, now joined by almond blossom, pressed flat. Small mercies, still glowing. They rode at dawn, hooves striking rhythm with gull cries drifting from Blackwater Bay. Behind them, workers raised scaffolds around Dragon's Gate. Somewhere hammer blows rang, new walls shaping from ruin. Smoke no longer fouled the breeze. Instead, the air smelled of lime mortar and wet earth, ready for seed. Podrick whistled a half-remembered melody. Muriel joined, humming. Harris grumbled, but tapped pommel in time. Ahead, the road forked on high ground. Brienne reined in, gazed south where fields waded to green, then east where Storm's End's bluffs cut horizon. Whichever path they chose would carry rumor, danger, hope. She turned east. The sun climbed, touching armor, igniting sparks upon Oathkeeper's hilt. Shadows fell behind them, long but harmless in morning blaze. And as Brienne rode, she felt not freedom, but room. Space inside ribcage, where grief might live beside purpose. Without poison, she breathed sea salt air, steadied shoulders. The road curled away, unrolling new miles like pages yet unwritten. She urged her horse faster, companions matching stride. Hoofbeats drummed a promise the wind carried across fields, that stories could grow from char and sorrow into something straighter, if stubborn hearts refused to bend beneath weight of either crown or past. And though the future would test them, as all roads test travelers, Brienne of Tarth rode onward, ledger strapped at saddle, sword at hip, faith stitched from fractured oaths, and a soft blooming where hope once hid, fragile but alive, whispering, "Keep riding, keep mending, keep the vow." Ila, Kandi. Wind poured off the bay in restless gusts that lifted salt spray up the chalk cliffs and whistled through every buckle of Brienne's harness. The King's Road had dwindled to a chalky strip that dove and re-emerged along the Stormland's coast, twisting between flooded dells and tangled pine. But at last, the slate-blue columns of Storm's End appeared, an abrupt fortress pillar rising from the very lip of the sea. It dwarfed its own curtain wall, a lone finger thrust into pewter sky. Gulls wheeling like pale cinders around the parapets. Brienne paused on a rise strewn with flowering gorse. So Maester Coleman and Septon Muriel could catch their breath, horses blowing steam into raw wind. Podrick reined beside her, cheeks red from the salt blow, eyes shining with that habit of reverence he never entirely lost around great sights. "I never thought I'd see it," he said, voice half lost in the surf roar. "My uncle always claimed the walls sang when storms hit full strength." Brienne studied the keep, remembering tales of siege and sorcery, of Renly's murder, of Davos smuggling onions through blockade. All ghosts walking those windy heights. "They don't sing," she answered, "but they may howl." She turned to Harrist Footley. "Standard ready?" He twitched the plain white banner free of its oilskin wrap, and Coleman, panting, guided his mule to the fore, so the cloth fluttered first into view for the watchers on the battlements. 2 horn blasts drifted down by way of reply. Cautious welcome. The last mile wound through heath spattered with purple thrift and the stumps of felled oaks. Recent work gangs had broadened the cart track, banking embankments against flood. Gendry's people, clearly. They passed stockpiles of dressed stone under canvas tarps and a half-finished palisade of ship masts, driven upright around the outer gardens. Brienne noted the work. Quick, practical, scant ornament. Storm's End prepared for allies but feared further war. All the same, a small mounted party trotted out from the gate. 6 Baratheon men-at-arms in blue and gold, a grim knight in battered antler helm, and at his side, the Lord of Storm's End. Gendry wore boiled leather-dyed Baratheon cobalt, ring mail glimmering at joints, but no crown, only a plain forge-wrapped headband of black iron. The breeze flicked his dark hair, and his blue eyes kindled when he recognized Brienne. He spurred ahead, swung down, and clasped her forearm in the smith's grip. "Forearm to forearm, you kept your ledger and your life both," he greeted through wind-rough voice. "Better fortune than most bring to my door these days." She returned a clasp. "Better fortune is what I mean to share, my lord, if the realm will have it." His gaze flicked to Podrick, Harrist, Muriel, Coleman, cataloging fatigue, mud, the faint smoky scent still clinging after the dragon pit fire. He nodded to each, then signaled his men. "Within these walls you are under guest right and steel peace. Even if storms come tonight, you'll rest dry." Now, the gatehouse swallowed them, defenses looming like a whale's ribs. Concentric arches, murder holes, and that famous yawning tunnel said to defy siege engines. Inside, the bailey bustled. Blacksmiths striking anvils, wains unlading sacks of barley, squires scrubbing mail, and a company of lumbering ox carts ferrying cedar beams. Everywhere banners of the crowned stag rippled. hastily stitched but numerous. Gendry led the way to a long hall, annex clamped to the tower's base. Fires crackled in 6 hearths. The heat struck like a smithy after the gale outside. The travelers shed cloaks that dripped seawater on reed mats. Maester Coleman collapsed onto a bench, rolling his shoulders with a squeak of chain. Septon Muriel murmured a brief prayer of thanks. Harrist merely stood sentinel by the door while 2 pages hurried to stable the horses. Gendry motioned for mulled wine, and servants produced stone cups. Only once his guests had sipped did he speak. Last Raven from King's Landing told of a council charter. Your doing, they say. Many hands. Brienne answered. Ours gathered the names and sealed the facts. Grey Worm, Lord Davos. Your own emissary. They hammered the accord. Gendry paced, restless as a bear denied hibernation. Hammering accords is easier than enforcing them. I'll swear to any charter that feeds folk and spares more orphans, but half the Reach lords grumble that a bastard holds the crown lands. Tarly cousins preach King Mace from Old Town. Florent stragglers wave torches in Bitterbridge. And the high road teems with sellswords who once wore Golden Company stripes, and now sell them to whoever funds. Then die. Captain Ormellin's sabotage cost them leverage, Harrist said. His men burn in Grey Worm's cells. Yet men loose in the field care little what happens to a captain behind bars. Gendry settled onto a wide bench, palms clasped between knees. So tell me, Lady Brienne, why should I shoulder this counsel if my neighbors refuse and my farmers pay price? Coleman unrolled parchment, smoothing the ledger's title page. Because refusing balkanizes the realm. Grain from the south must reach the north before next frost, else winter kills thousands. The throne treasury is ash. Loans require bravozy confidence. Confidence requires legality. Denderwind. Muriel spoke soft but steady. And legality must root in justice. The ledger promises a reckoning, no man or woman above its record. Gendry studied her shaved crown, eyes narrowing. Justice. My father sat that iron chair once. What justice did he leave? Burned fields and dead children on both sides of a rebellion. I respect justice. I fear what men label by that word to hide ambition. Da. Podrick stepped forward unexpectedly. Sir Jaime feared the same. His voice quivered, but he forged on. He said knights wrap swords in pretty words. That's why Lady Brienne wrote the ledger. So words can't hide steel any longer. Silence took the hall. Fire popped. Gendry's expression softened a fraction. Sir Jaime saved my life at the Dragon Pit parley. Threw me behind a fallen beam when the Queen's dragon spewed flame. He faced Brienne. Will your record remember that? It does, she said, and pointed to a margin note in Coleman's script. Page 9, line 13. He rose, exhaled a breath like Bellows' sigh. Then I'll hear the full reading tomorrow before my council. If we find truth through and through, I'll fix my seal beside yours and Winter's and Grey Worm's. But if we smell bias, he left threat unfinished. It did not need voice. Night spilled quick in the stormlands. Cloud murk crawled over stars like sodden sailcloth. Brienne's company received adjacent chambers in the east wing. Thick-walled, straw-sweet bedding. Heavy shutters to bar the roar of breakers. Yet, leap eluded Brienne. Memory of green fire still flickered behind eyelids. The weight of Jaime's golden hand, buried, yes, but never lighter, pressed phantom heavy at her ribs. She rose and paced the corridor, passing candle niches and arrow loops that whistled in drafts. At a mid-landing, she heard the clang of hammer on iron, rhythmic despite the late hour. Following, she emerged onto a covered walk above the keep's smithy. Gendry stood there alone. Save soot streaks. Swinging a hammer onto a glowing billet, sparks arced like meteors. kissing his arms with tiny embers that died before leaving mark. He paused, sensing her. Couldn't sleep either. She shook her head. He quenched the steel in a trough and leaned on the anvil. When storms scream, I work. The sound inside the stone drowns even surf. He nodded to a nearby bench. She sat. He poured water from cistern, handed her a dented cup. Tell me straight. Did he beg for life? She knew whom he meant. She stared at the forge bed, coals pulsing heart red. No, he offered it. She sipped water, tasting faintly of smoke. He asked me to save them all. Killing Cersei first would have left him no peace. Killing both was the only certain end to their threat. And to yours, Gendry said quietly. Brienne clenched the cup. A butcher's solution. But I am only a knight, not a maester of diplomacy. Knights choose. Maesters choose with ink, us with iron. He lifted the billet. A rough sword blank etched by first strikes. You know how you prevent bad steel? Kill the impurities when they're bright. He tossed it back to fire. Doesn't make the blade lighter to the hand that swings, though. She watched flame swallow metal. I will carry the weight till grave. His gaze lingered on her face. Fine thing about steel. You fold it, hammer it, fold again. The more you work it, the stronger. People can break. Steel forgives beating. He quenched the blank again. Hiss loud as surf. Let your vow fold you, Brienne. Don't let it crack you. Morning council met in the storm hall. Round table beneath painted rafters, depicting storms and stags. Lords and captains joined. Sir Eldon Estermont, Lady Crinna Swan, Master Cordwin Wild, 6 tall shipwrights from Massey's Hook, and a clutch of lesser banner knights. Gendry sat at the table's east arc, flanked by a stern maester of Storm's End and Davos Seaworth, arrived in the night, hooded and road-grimed but smiling that wry fish smile. Coleman opened the ledger, his voice thin but clear. For 3 hours he read entries, accounts of hoarded grain, testimonies by bakers whipped for hiding loaves, statements from unsullied medics tending children gaunt as candle wicks, depositions from surviving members of the small council describing Cersei's refusal to open storehouses, all cross-referenced with ship manifests, guard rosters and Jaime's last edicts, requesting relief wagons. The hall shifted from polite detachment to uneasy silence. Davos folded arms, rubbing thumb across finger stubs in old habit. Gendry's jaw flexed. None interrupted until Coleman closed the last page. Lady Swan whispered first. Bleeding 7. My barge brought lemons to the court a month before the fire. We never docked. Guards seized half the cargo as tax, but we saw no coin. Not 1 copper. Sir Estermont grunted. Tax for an empty treasury. Same thieves dine in every reign. Gendry tapped knuckles on table. This record says not only the queen but half her council conspired. Punishing ghosts feeds no bellies. What remedy do you ask? Muriel raised her head. That we affix our seals to affirm these findings true. Distribute copies to every lord, sept, and guildhall. Let it serve as shield against future tyrants, and as foundation for restitution. Then? Master Wild laughed sharp. Restitution? From what purse? The crown is bare bone. Brienne finally spoke, words like measured blade strokes. From the coffers of those who profited, Lannister reserves at Casterly Rock. Treasures Euron Greyjoy seized and left hidden in harbors. Tyrell gold still held at the Iron Bank. The charter empowers collection. Davos cleared throat. Iron Bank will demand collateral. Then grant them timber rights to Crownlands forests for certain years, Gendry said, surprising the room. We feed starving folk now, or the realm fractures before harvest. He stood and walked to the ledger. His smith-scarred thumb felt rough as rasp across the vellum edge. He took the Baratheon seal, 2 crowned stags facing, and pressed wax upon the final page. Warm silence followed. 1 hammer blow, he said. Others must follow. He turned to Estermont. Swan, Wild. After a moment's wait, each took their seals and pressed. When Davos added his, he winked at Brienne. Not a king's seal, but a knight of onions holds weight in these parts. The next days passed in flurry. Scribes produced 10 copies under torchlight. Couriers departed north, west, east. Davos and Coleman designed levy drafts for forest rights, while Gendry's quartermasters inventoried grain tiers for emergency caravans. Brienne drilled Storm's End squires in swordcraft, partly to keep her limbs from stiffening, partly to scatter the crows of self-reproach that pecked whenever she idled. She felt watchers behind every arrow slit, some curious, others hostile. Rumor of a Lannister Slayer night reached even hedge huts. She carried Oathkeeper openly, hiding bled trust. One dawn, Podrick staggered into the yard, face white. "Letter," he gasped, handing a sodden scrap sealed with a crude horse skull brand. Brienne cracked wax. The message was brief. "We hold the ledger copy bound for Old Town. Trade ink for blood at the Wailing Tower before moon sets or pages burn. Signed only, Sons of the Harpy." But that name belonged to Moraine's rebels. Seize away. Someone played at Phantoms. Brienne showed Gendry and Davos. Davos cursed softly. Wailing Tower's a ruin on the Dornish marches. Good pinch point, steep gullies, no patrols. Gendry tightened a gauntlet. "We ride. Their bluff ends before dusk." Brienne shook her head. "No army. Hostages die at first banner glimpse. 2 riders, no more. Slip through pine and treat." "I said we," Gendry insisted. "Then we," she allowed. She chose Podrick despite his pale protests. One more sword and witness, and Sir Perkin followed, a rangy archer who knew March Hill goat tracks. They left within the hour, cloaked in gray, ledger copy hidden beneath Brienne's breastplate. The Wailing Tower loomed by late afternoon. A leaning spire of weathered basalt perched atop a ridge where storm winds funneled into moans. Thus its name. Broken crenellations jagged the sky. At its base, crumbling outer walls pocketed shadows deep enough to hide 30 men. Gendry signaled silence. They dismounted, tethered horses among wind-buckled pines, and advanced on foot. Halfway up the scree slope, an arrow hissed, thunking Gendry's pauldron. Another skittered stone near Podrick. They crouched behind a tumbled buttress. Voices rang. "Ledger first, then your hides." Brienne rose slowly, helm off. White banner scrap knotted round gauntlet. "We bring the treaty. Show us hostages." Laughter answered, ragged, youthful. From the tower mouth emerged a boy scarcely older than 15. Helm too large sliding over brow. He brandished a spear like broom. "I am Sir Jomar of Casterly, heir to a vengeance you cannot imagine." Behind him shuffled 4 more boys, faces grim with the false certainty of orphans, each wearing mismatched mail and lion brooches bright as stolen coin. Gendry stared. "Children, pages, squires, runaways from the Red Keep," Brienne murmured. She stepped forward. "Jomar, I knew Lord Casterly's cousins. Fine men. Lower the spear. We can feed you, send you home." The boy's chin quivered, but he jabbed. "Home burned. Your dragons burned it, and you killed my queen. Ledger says so. Ledger lies." Podrick edged out, voice gentle. "Not lies, Jomar. Hard tidings. I lost home too. My father fought for the wrong sigil. Come with us, I'll tell you how one lives after." Jomar's eyes flicked, wavered. But another squire, a wiry Tyrell lad, snatched a torch from wall bracket and lunged for a pile of parchments inside doorway. "End their lies," Brienne charged. Gendry kept arrow volleys at bay, hammer parrying shafts. Brienne vaulted rubble, striking the torch aside. Flame kissed first ledger sheet. She slapped with mailed palm, smothering sparks. Podrick tackled 2 boys, wrestling blades away. The Tyrell squire drew dagger, slashed at Brienne. She checked him with elbow, wrenching weapon free. They herded the boys into courtyard, where evening sun bled through clouds. The children trembled now as anger spent left only fear. Gendry knelt to Jomar, lifting his chin. "Your rage is iron raw from earth. Unshaped it cuts no one, only rusts. Let me forge it into plowshare or sword sworn to better cause." Tears slid down soot-sprayed cheeks. Jomar dropped spear. One by one the others lowered arms. Brienne retrieved the ledger sheets. Edges singed, but legible. She exhaled. Word travels by wings faster than smoke. We'll send new copies. She faced the boys. First, supper. They returned to Storm's End 2 mornings later, leading 5 chastened squires. Davos arranged quarters and tutors. Muriel promised prayer and letter lessons. News of the rescue spread like dawn, bolstering goodwill faster than decrees. Brienne's heart eased a fraction, one wrong prevented, though too many remained. Yet storm clouds built literal and figurative. A Reach sortie massed near Haystack Hall, claiming Crownland's timber felling violated ancient boundaries. A Lyseni galley fleet anchored off Cape Wrath, its magisters demanding missed payments from Cersei's defunct contracts. And in King's Landing, Grey Worm's messenger Raven warned of plague creeping among shattered districts, flux from tainted wells. Gendry convened war council in the forge-yard, anvil doubling as table. Maps pinned beneath horseshoes curled in salt wind. Too many fires, he muttered. Water buckets few. Brienne traced roads with gauntlet tip. We divide. I ride to King's Landing. Organize clean wells and quarantine lines. Harris goes to Haystack, bearing treaty proof of timber rights. You sail to Cape Wrath. Show the Lyseni our Bravosi loan guarantee. Davos commands as envoy. Leaving Storm's End thin, Davos noted. Thin, but not hollow, Podrick said. Ser Perkin and the new squires can defend, and word of hostages freed travels far. Few will test to keep guarded by children who chose redemption. Gendry met Brienne's gaze. Always the path back to that burning city. It still burns, she answered. Until the sick are fed and healed, my ledger is ink on water. She buckled saddle. The return ride passed in blur. River fords foaming with spring melt, fields greening despite black scars, travelers spreading talk of the Storm's End Pact. Near Bitterbridge, she detoured to an encampment of Reachmen, mustering under Lady Abella Rowan. She presented council seals. After terse talks, Rowan agreed to escort grain wagons to the Roserad in exchange for confirmation of fair timber tariffs. One more knot untied. She pressed on alone. Sleeping little, heart drumming with urgency. On the 5th dawn the city reared into view, still broken, but scaffolds now gridded the skyline like ribs healing beneath bruised skin. Banners of 3 powers flew, the pale wolf over river fish, the crowned stag above White Tower, and a plain black and red pennon bearing no sigil. Grey Worm's sign of freedman. Inside, stench of rot melded with lie from cleaning crews. Carts bore corpses to mass graves beyond the city wall, but others bore bricks, lime, timber. Brienne rode to Still Tower, dismounting among triage tents, where chirurgeons ladled broth to fevered children like fledglings in blankets. Grey Worm stepped from shade, showing dark circles under eyes. You see, he said, sweeping arm to sick bay. I saw worse in the camps after Winterfell. She answered, though her stomach twisted. She offered Rowan's grain pledge, Storm's End seal, new ledger copies. Logistics talk filled an hour's march. They walked between pallets of coughing victims, assigning wells for boiling, mapping latrine trenches, counting charcoal for water filters the maesters devised. By eventide Brienne's voice rasped from orders shouted. She scrubbed hands in vinegar, blood and bile rinsing into gutters. When at last she climbed Still Tower stairs, she found Maester Coleman dozing over quill stubs, parchment drafted for Lyseni negotiation. She touched his shoulder. He startled, blinking owlish. Go to cot, Maester. I'll stand watch. He mumbled thanks and shuffled off. She sank onto stool, forehead on Ledger's leather spine. Rain pattered distant shingles. Soothing. Somewhere below, a newborn wailed, caught by Muriel's lullaby. Brienne closed eyes, only for a breath. But sleep took her, dragging her down past memory's green flames into dream of quiet fields, cracked fountains, a golden hand waving goodbye like a small sun setting. She woke to dawn light and Podrick's gentle cough. Raven from Storm's End, he said, handing scroll. Gendry's hand. Lyseni pact sealed, fleet withdrawn for now. Davos sailing north to broker Ironbank disbursement. Good tidings. She smiled. Podrick's grin mirrored hers, though shadows under his eyes told of nights tending flux patients. What now? He asked. She tapped ledger. We keep folding steel. Outside bells began to ring. Clear this time. Not alarm but summons. Grey Worm's Day Council convened. Voices rose. Merchants complaining of tax burden. Bakers requesting fuel. Freedmen seeking land. Brienne stepped onto balcony. Rooftops glimmered in early sun, and from every quarter smoke curled, not from wildfire, but from cook fires. Kiln fires. Forge fires. Life fires. She gripped railing, felt cool iron-steady palms still scarred from torch battle at the dragon pit. Behind her Podrick whispered, "Do you hear it? The city breathing. Now." She listened. Hammer on nail, wheel on stone, toddler laughter, seagull cries. A slow, rough breath, but breath. She turned. Come, work waits. In the weeks that followed, ledger pages multiplied like seedlings, planted in sept libraries, guild halls, harbor masters' records. Harris returned with reach signatures. Coleman sent squires to Bravos bearing timber vouchers. Muriel coordinated orphanages in ruined sept cloisters. Gendry rode north to parley with Lady Sansa at Harrenhal, forging northern crownland trade corridors. And Brienne? She patrolled alley wells, argued tunnel sanitation with dwarf masons, broke up fistfights over bread lines, and replaced rotting signposts with plain boards etched by apprentices who could not read, but could carve. Truth inked here? Ask. She listened to grievances, amended margins, added addenda sworn by the Seven or the drowned god, depending who pledged. She trained a city watch detachment drawn equally from freedmen. River recruits, Baratheon lancers, teaching her old lessons. Step inside strike, lead with hip, keep shield high. She gave them white armbands painted with a narrow open book. Pages, folk called them. Some sneered, others saluted. Not every day brought gain. A flux relapse killed 30 in Flea Bottom. A Blackwater barge of grain sank in spring flood. A Tyrell cousin tried to poison Gendry's envoy and vanished into night. But each setback met counterstroke. Wells reslaked, levee grain rerouted, harbor chains restored. One evening Brienne climbed the Red Keep hill alone, stepping through cordons into the scarred hall again. Moonlight fell on empty stones where she had knelt by Jaime's last breath. The cavernous space smelled now of sawdust and fresh quarried blocks stacked for rebuilding. Grey Worm intended a memorial library here, not a throne. She knelt once more, laid Oathkeeper flat before her. Fingers brushed blade, feeling warmth from day's sun still trapped in metal waves. I have folded, Jaime. She whispered, folded till strength grew. She drew deep breath. And I will fold again tomorrow. She rose, sheathed her sword, and descended into city lights, where thousands of small fires glimmered along streets rebuilt. A map of constellations fallen to earth. Podrick awaited at tower foot with 2 horses. Night Patrol wants you to bless their new helms, he said, offering reins. She mounted. Hoofbeats echoed between rising walls, scrawled with children's chalk drawings. Wolves, stags, dragons, books. Bells tolled curfew, but windows glowed with hearths, not fear. The ledger remained unfinished, would always grow. Living record of human failing and repair. But with every new seal pressed, every throat fed, every sick child healed, she felt the golden hand's weight lighten in memory. Not forgotten, transformed, alloyed into purpose, stronger than regret. They turned onto the street of steel. Forges clanged. Sparks lifted like fireflies. Somewhere a smith hammered molten iron, rhythm steady, certain. Gendry's lesson rang. Kill the impurities, fold the steel, work it till strong. Brienne urged her horse forward, banner streaming white as first daylight. Beside her rode Podrick, taller now in new brigandine, eyes bright with expectation. Behind them, the city breathed. Ahead the road curved, vanishing into lamplight and possibility. They did not slow.